You're listening to the DisasterClass Podcast Situation Update by Instinct Ready Emergency Management. All right, and welcome back to DisasterClass, everyone. Jason Perez here with me, Wesley Long, Jason Martin, aka Pappy, and also we're happy to have with us today Anthony Escoto of Disaster Operations Group. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure.
So we're doing something a little different in this episode. So, a lot of things going on right now. One of the big things, the big topics, a lot of catching the headlines is the fires out in Los Angeles. So we're going to do kind of a situation update. We're going to take a look at that situation, break it down a little bit, help our listeners with some facts. But first and foremost, we want to just let everyone know our hearts go out to everyone who's being affected by this event. We know it's a very dire situation. A lot of people being affected. We think about the families of those who have perished in the event. So our hearts go out to them, and also a big shout out to all the emergency responders working around the clock, the emergency management agencies, the firefighters, all those that are responding. We know that it's a lot of work. And so we give you a big shout out. So before we get into this, just also want to take a moment just to thank Sawyer Products for sponsoring DisasterClass and helping us to bring this information. As you know, and especially thinking about this situation too in California, water supplies can easily be contaminated, and so we're happy to partner with Sawyer to bring high quality water filters that can be useful in times of disaster such as this. So if you want to look into any information on that, go visit Sawyer.com to learn more, and also to find a retailer near you. So we think, guys, maybe just starting a little bit with a little situation update where we're at. So we are recording this episode January 17th.
Yep.
So that's when we're recording. This is the facts and details and updates that we're going to be bringing as of this recording date. So we're going to try to get this episode out pretty quick. But maybe we could take a look at just what are some of the facts, what's going on, and updating our listeners.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the things I just also wanted to mention in regard to this, the purpose of this is in addition to our normal content that we put out, part of our goal at Instinct Ready and Disaster Class is to help individuals maintain a preparedness mindset, right? That's the goal. So hopefully through this, you'll get a little situation update, sit rep. You'll see what's going on. The goal through this is to just help point folks in the right direction because there's a lot of misinformation out there sometimes, and it's kind of hard to weed through that. And I know, like for me, I live out on the East Coast, so sometimes by the time the news gets to us here, there might be some differences from the original story. So our goal is just to keep you guys abreast of what's going on and then point you in the right direction with some resources. So we're super happy to introduce Anthony to our viewership, to our audience, to you guys. So maybe before we even start, Anthony, maybe give us a little overview of who you are, some of the experiences that you've had, and some of the experience that you bring to the table, and why it's really important for us to have you at this discussion today.
Yeah, good afternoon, and again, thank you guys for having me. Not the best circumstances of what to introduce ourselves, but I do appreciate you bringing me on and talking about this today. So again, my name's Anthony Escoto. I am the owner of Disaster Operations Group. This is a passion project of mine that I started. I really want to focus in expanding my skills as an emergency manager, in providing support with using 4 pillars. We really want to make sure that people know the community approach of getting things done, whether it's mass notification, um, language access, or cultural dependencies, or breaking some of those cultural backgrounds and communicating to your communities. Making sure that you know how to properly make private or public-private initiatives or partnerships, helping you with special events, We're huge into comms. I'm personally a comms nerd. Uh, that interoperability consulting is definitely something that we can support you, whether you're a private sector organization and you want to know how to communicate with the public or vice versa. We're there for you. And we also do hazard vulnerability assessments. If it's something that you need, we have your back here. Yeah, and that's who we are.
Very
Awesome.
nice.
Yeah,
Very
we're
nice.
glad to
And
have you with us today.
Yeah, we
Thanks.
appreciate tapping into some of your expertise as we dive into this incident too. So maybe just to give just a little overview again, all this data is as of January 17, 2025. So we're going to be specifically looking at the Palisades fire in Los Angeles, California. So the start date, January 7th, 2025, 10:30 a.m. And as of this time, and it's funny because there are, and we're going to get into a little bit of, misinformation out there. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that's floating around social media and things, but we're going to help point you to where we can get reliable, up-to-date information. So as of this time, the cause is still under investigation. And it's pretty big, as you know. So right now, again, as of this moment, it's showing 31% contained, over 23,000 acres, and then it's of course in the county of Los Angeles. This is a question I have, that some have posed in the past, and maybe we could just speak to it. Right now we're talking about when we think about wildfires containment, and we hear that term thrown out. Okay, it's X% contained. Right now, the Palisades fire, 31% contained. Helping our listeners understand, what does that mean? What does it mean where we're talking about a percentage of containment?
So with it being contained, the actual definition of that is
Mhm.
keeping it within what's harmful under control.
Right.
So when we're thinking about, or within the limits. So when we think about these wildfires being contained, that's the percentage of what they've been able to manage to keep it from being even more harmful to the rest of the population, to the landscape. So yeah, just keeping it under control, and what effort they've been able to do.
Yeah, and there's another really good definition that I found where it says, and I'll just read it direct here. Containment does not mean that a blaze has been completely extinguished. It refers to how much of a perimeter has been established around an active fire, preventing it from growing and engulfing more land. So it's about how much of a perimeter they have around it. So when they've got 65% contained, that means 65% of it has a perimeter, and we know it's not going to be able to go past this area and this zone. So that's
Good.
why it's really important to understand that how that containment works.
Right.
Yeah, and there's different ways to do containment lines. Sometimes there's natural barriers like a river, other waterways. You can also construct them, the containment lines, by digging trenches wide enough, at the fire's flank, or by eliminating the vegetation and other of the fuel that would keep the fire burning in the immediate area that could ignite. So there's a couple
Yeah.
ways of attempting containment. So it can mean different things at different times.
Yeah.
That's what you get when
Absolutely.
you hear them say we're cutting a fire line, or they got the dozer in there clearing a fire line. They're breaking, they're creating that barrier so that
Correct.
hopefully that fire doesn't surpass that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So still a lot of work to do. Only 31% contained at this moment. So still definitely an ongoing situation. And our thoughts and prayers are with the firefighters working hard to be able to contain this disaster here. So let's get into a little bit about public information, especially because we're kind of spitting out some of these facts, some of the information. So let's think about, where can people go for up-to-date, reliable information. Social media is a great tool, but it can also be very dangerous. if you're not not careful. Unfortunately, we are in this day and age. We're so used to just wanting information quick, 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 quick. Um, any of you guys want to speak to the danger of that?
Anybody can put anything out there on social media. You can take something and twist it. You can modify it with AI or whatever you want to do. So, or just put their own twist to it. So it's social media is, unless you're going to the agency to their page,
Yeah.
it's not always the best resource for getting accurate, up to date information.
Yeah, I really agree with you, Pappy. I think you really laid it out. I think it could be a mixture of opinion with factual, with some political agenda, and then after so many people add to it, it just starts like snowballing downhill, and it just keeps adding on, and it might not be with malintent. Not everything is done with malintent.
Okay.
But unfortunately, these are the cascading impacts of just not going to factual information and just providing an opinion about a snippet of something that you might have saw. And listen, I've caught myself on this as well. I think we've spoken about this off camera. Examples where I've been misinformed and now I'm fast to be like, "Hey, did you see this? Wow." Um, so it's really good to go into sources, trusted sources, um, just to verify information before you even send it to a friend, like I have done, unfortunately, in the past myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think
think
we've all been
there's
guilty at that.
Yeah, we all have been,
Yeah.
right? Unfortunately. So I think there's two M's when it comes to this that are very important. You guys talked about malintent, right? So malintent, someone intentionally taking something. Now, I would say hopefully by and large with situations like this, as we talked about, because there is a very sobering component to it. There's loss of life, there's loss of property. This is going to be life changing for a lot of people. That I think malintent, generally speaking, would not be associated with something like this. But the other M, the misinformation, um, it can be just as damaging. But the intent isn't necessarily the same, right? It's just if you're going to the wrong source for information and then you become a pundit for that, you are now propagating information that is just not true. So that's why it's so important to fact check, make sure that you've got your sources in place. And then also the other adage, if you don't have to pass it along, just don't, right?
Leave it be.
And I know like a lot of times people are wondering like, oh, what your company's doing? How are you guys doing? Are you not posting about this? Listen, sometimes it's best to just let the ones involved with the proper channels be the loudest voices in the room, right?
Yeah.
We don't
100%.
have to say something all the time.
And what we try to do, like even on our disaster class social media, is we'll repost like the the emergency management, the official posts. So in this case, and maybe we could just speak to that. So what if we're looking for trusted information? Where should our listeners, where should people being affected by this, where should they go? Where should they be looking at?
Well, I think like, for this hazard specifically, this is a fire hazard. And I think that's what the immediate action should be of the community. What's the hazard? It's a fire hazard. So let me look at the fire department or the responding agency that's actually attacking this hazard, right? So for this instance, I'll go to Cal Fire or LA Fire, or any of the LA response agencies, right? That's who I would trust of any information coming out of. Not necessarily any super local media because of certain biases that might have, but you want current factual information of the response, I would go directly to the responding sources.
Yeah, and a lot of times with that, thank you, Anthony. It's a great call out. A lot of times with that, it's really helpful if you're going to a .gov, .gov.
Yep.
Very, very helpful if you're going there because those municipalities have the responsibility, at least to maintain some type of objectivity, right? This is going to start leading into another conversation that we've had, Anthony and Jason and Pappy, which we will continue in the future, hopefully under different circumstances than this. But how politics plays a role in emergency management, even though emergency management in and of itself is not a political thing, a lot of times it's controlled by political entities. So where the money comes from, how the money is spent, there's sometimes an agenda with that. So it can be difficult. It can be difficult sometimes, but generally speaking, a .gov in this case is where you're going to want to spend your time.
Yeah. So for our listeners, if you want to know, especially where we're getting our information from, you can go to fire.ca.gov. So that's for Cal Fire. So fire.ca.gov. And then you can see all the active incidents that are currently going on in California. And they have a specific page for the Palisades fire and also the Eaton fire as well. And it's got all the incident facts. You can get up-to-date reports. So the last one, they have a list of reports. The last update is as of January 17, 2025 at 8:21 a.m. Pacific time. So you can go and look up-to-date reports. You can see incident maps. And if you're going to be watching on our YouTube, we're going to have, or if you're listening, we're going to be posting some of the video footage of the websites. You can look at the fire maps and everything that we're looking at. So maybe check that out on YouTube if you're listening in.
Yeah, those are good resources. Thank you for that, Jason.
So so that's as far as like where to go for information. Looking to your local emergency management agency, right? That's usually one of the best things to do, right? Looking at the responders, those who are actually responding to the event are going to have the best information. But just a question, we kind of spoke to it a little bit, but here's a question: what can people do to protect themselves from misinformation? What are maybe there's some practical things, some strategies? Okay, you see something, someone sends you something. How can you protect yourself from potentially being affected by misinformation?
Well, a practice that I had, like I said before, personally fell into this trap. Um, Even when I see a comparison or a number put out there, um, I do a bit of research, in a bit, and it, like Wesley said before, if it's not coming from one of those .gov resources, then that's how I debug the actual post right away. Uh, a quick example of this, I saw just in the comparison of how large the Palisades fire was, amounting it to amount of football fields. Then I saw the comparison to the island of Manhattan in New York City. I saw it was 3 times the island. Then I actually did some acreage comparage. It's about half. It's still huge. But just imagine some. It's very mass notification is huge, right? And the reason I'm going off on a tangent here, if I may,
Please.
sometimes like not being current factual, you have people that look at those details, something as easily as a misspell or even a number that they know is inaccurate, it might throw your entire message off the rails.
Right.
Everything else that says it goes out the window. So comparing it to the 3 times the size of the island of Manhattan, no one's ever going to listen to anything else that you say if that's that type of person that's only looking for facts and they know it's not real. Um, it's about a bit over half right now. And city of Manhattan is 14,000 acres, and the current fire is at 23,000 acres, which is large. I mean, I couldn't even imagine 2 times the size of Manhattan fire inside of New York City. Um, it sounds like an Armageddon scenario.
Yeah.
And no doubt the people that are there are feeling that too.
Oh yeah.
But I really appreciate that point, Anthony, because it really takes away your credibility if all you're known for is just spreading misinformation and not fact checking. So, there's enough of that going around. We don't want to ourselves add to that and just, oh, here's a little snippet on social media. I'm going to forward it, or I'm going to post it on my page, or whatever. We want to fact check things.
And it's a big call out too for, especially thinking about what we like to talk about in disaster class is helping individuals and community organizations, right, prepare and respond to emergencies. And so if you are responsible for issuing notifications, mass notifications, and public information, how important it is to make sure that you are what you are giving out is factual, because the slightest little hiccup can,
Yep.
as Pappy said, can damage your credibility. So that's why it's important to have a good communication strategy, a way of disseminating information to the public. And from the public side, we have to be patient too. Sometimes we want information, we want it now, but it does take time to make sure that you're vetting your sources, that you have the update before you put it out, because once it's out there, that's it.
Yeah, it's out there.
And I think it's so important, like even what you guys do at Instinct Ready of preparing the community um beforehand, right? That's the time when people should be knowing where are they receiving their emergency notifications from.
Right.
Can they register there now? Even during this, right? This is not a depending on the scenario of where you're at in this unfortunate fire. uh, can you now, are you in a safe place now? Can you register to receive emergency notifications? Whether you're in an emergency shelter or still at home, right? You want to receive this verified information in real time that your county might be sending out as soon as possible, right? So that's another amazing source that I really encourage anybody, no matter where they're at, doesn't matter what hazard you think that you might face or not face, sign up for your emergency notifications as fast as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to speak to that real quick, and
Yeah.
just a shout out for our listeners. So if you are in the LA area, right? So for that, you can sign up at emergency.lacity.gov/alerts, and you can sign up for the LA city's emergency alert system. So every location should and typically has their some sort of system for issuing out emergency notifications. So
Yes.
specifically for LA, that's where you can go to sign up for alerts. And if you're in another location now, maybe this is a good time to start thinking about, does my city or where I live have a method of issuing mass notifications? And if so, am I signed up for it?
Right.
Yeah, so I want to speak to that, Jason. That's a great call out. It's very important because when we were talking about this, we had a prep meeting a few days ago where we had kind of all hands on deck talking about this, and the seriousness of even commenting on this matter, and then some of some of the goals. So we did talk about how we wanted to have a message specific for those directly involved, right? The people that are involved in LA County right now. So thank you for mentioning that. You gave them some very specific resources that if they haven't already connected to, they're going to want to as soon as possible. And we can talk to this piece a little bit as well. Anthony, when we start talking about evacuation zones, understanding what your zones are, the emergency acuity of where you're at, next to ground zero or the X, and then what activity you're supposed to take, right? That's huge with communication and knowing where you are and how to get that information. You may need to go north, south, east, west based on what's going on. So very, very important in real time for those affected. Secondly, the individuals we wanted to speak to are those who are not living in that area and maybe right now are not dealing with a natural disaster. This is the time to prep. This is the time to get you and your family ready in case something happens where you live. In our discussion, we talked about how this was just like a perfect combination of disasters for LA. You've got the fire, you've got the drought that has been there for a long time, so there's a lot of dry vegetation, right? Stuff that hasn't been saturated for a long time. Coupled with the Santa Ana winds, which are taking this and just sending it all over the place. A couple of different cataclysmic things came together to make this something massive. And it's like, man, we didn't necessarily calculate that this was going to happen. But in our discussions, it was just very interesting how in the past few months, we've had a few of those type incidents where we're like, we didn't necessarily calculate, we didn't expect there to be a hurricane in the mountains. in North Carolina. We didn't expect the mountain folk to have to deal with a hurricane. That wasn't on our radar. And also, too, let's not forget, we're coming off the heels of Maui. That wasn't very long ago, where it was like, what is going on? So, a lot of times when we have situations like this in the middle of the situation during the response phase, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, what are you doing to help?" Well, Wesley, you have an emergency management company. What are you doing to help? And it's very difficult to let people understand that that's why we are so passionate about prepping individuals and that preparedness mindset during the good times. That's why we bring you this content. That's why we continue to try to shout from the mountaintop and let people know what's going on. Because a lot of times, once the thing happens, it's very difficult to get resources to you. It's very difficult to get you additional help when the thing happens. So, again, for our listeners who aren't affected by it, please let this be the wake up call for you and your family. Very simple question. Do you have a go bag? Do you have a plan? Is your plan flexible enough to account for different types of risks that may come to your area? If you can't answer those questions, please either reach out to us or someone in your local community, your Office of Emergency Management. Please start taking care of those things now, because we don't know when the next thing is going to happen where we're like, well, we didn't see that happening. But here we are again. So for those who aren't affected, please do something as soon as possible for you, your family, your loved ones, also so that you can assist your community, right? So that the community can be more resilient. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now.
And I think that's a real good call out too, Wesley, because so many people think it's not going to happen to me,
Oh,
or the first responders are going to be able to come and take care of me or help me out. One of the best quotes I've heard is, "You are your own first responder."
100%.
You have to prepare for yourself, and one of my contacts on LinkedIn is from that area, the LA area, and he put on LinkedIn that before this really got out of hand, he was watching the weather, watching what was going on, and before the evacuation notices went out, he got his family up. He called his adult kids that were, had their own places, their own families, 5 o'clock in the morning, and they left.
Mhm.
And fortunately, they didn't lose their homes, but their areas were directly impacted. And so we have to think for ourselves and can't expect the government or the first responders or whoever, whatever agency, to do that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that being said, there are individuals who bear the responsibility, also the privilege of thinking about the community. And Anthony, I'm coming to you with this. We won't mention the organization you work with, but you are tasked with a massive responsibility um, to be thinking about, be planning for, be assisting um, a municipality and some constituents. So maybe you can just talk to what that's like, um, trying to plan for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. Um, the responsibility of that, what goes into that prep, how much time and effort you put into it, and then what individuals who are community members can do to assist their local Office of Emergency Management.
Yeah, so this is a topic that I've been a bit more passionate about lately, and it's something I guess I was one of the many out there. Again, I'll put myself in the crucifix, for argument's sake here, that I was one of the people who thought, that's not gonna happen. Like, why are we wasting our resources? Yet, with all the hazards that we've seen progressing after 2020, and continue evolving and increasing, if we, as Poppy mentioned, if we as individuals do our individual preparedness for ourselves and our families, the best case scenario is that you have that help from your local responders.
Right.
But if we do prepare for that worst case scenario, um, then won't have to wait for responders ever, right? And let's look at certain hazards that are hitting our communities. You might, if you have high winds, if you're up in the mountains, as you mentioned before, Wesley, prepare for a tornado hitting that mountaintop. Prepare for a hurricane. I was just talking to my sister. She lives out in Bethlehem, PA, and she was showing me hilltops that got hit by a tornado a few months ago. That's insane. I would have never thought mountains in Pennsylvania would get hit by any twister of any sort. So really taking that hazard and thinking, duplicate how intensive that hazard is that you might encounter, and just prepare for that worst case. Um, we had a we had a in the summer here we had, what was it, a very small earthquake that scared the entire tri-state area out here in New York City. Prepare for that worst case. What if it was a direct hit under the bedrock of Manhattan that hit in New York City? What are we doing? How are we communicating? How are we evacuating? Like, prepare for that worst case. And if you do that as individuals and the community that you belong to, it is so much more. It's a lot more impactful than if it comes from any local government official.
Yeah.
Now, what to do as a community member, be that community ambassador. Um, if you can be affiliated to a local response agency or an emergency management agency to you, that's great. If not, be that community ambassador. Amplify some of these resources, whether it's a faith-based, non-for-profit, whatever organization you belong, whether it's a VFW, amplify some of these things and get people's buy-in around you. Exercise, train, plan, and go around that cycle. Engage youth in these conversations, because I think that's a huge gap as well. People, especially, and listen again, this is something new to a lot of people. I think even to a lot of responders, emergency management is new. But plan, exercise, and go through that cycle, and be that community ambassador and amplify this. And look for non-traditional exercises to do this. You could do this in a fun way. Create a bingo with certain hazards and see how it is. Just to start embedding these words and some of these trigger words also, that as can be an earthquake, a fire, because people might be coming from different parts of the country, that they might have seen different things or experienced different things, right? But as the more we recycle these words and embed them, the easier it is to talk about it, and it becomes a day-to-day conversation.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Get out there and do something. So now I'm looking at you, Pappy. Um, I know that you're an individual who takes your personal and your family prepping very seriously. You've reached out in the past, you've got some training, and you joined an organization in your area pretty recently that was all about emergency response training. Maybe you can talk about that, the concept, why you did that, what you were looking for, um, and how that mindset and that preparedness mindset is assisting you to continue to keep you and your loved ones safe so that you can be your own first responder.
Yeah, so I think everybody should go through either this or something similar, find something. So I took the CERT training here last year,
Mhm.
and fortunately, the community I live in, they actually included Stop the Bleed in it too. So
Nice.
that was an added bonus, and I thought that was tremendous. So adding those supplies to my go bag. But I saw a lot of people in that class that don't live in the exact community I do. They live in some small rural areas, and to see their focus and wanting to help their small communities, this one gal, she took and put together a community emergency response plan using their fire station. as the center, as the EOC basically, but also where everybody can come to in the community. But it's important for people to take that training, whatever training is available, because not all communities have a CERT class or a CERT group. And unfortunately, the community I'm in, that CERT class or that CERT team is basically just a PR for the police department. They're not actively involved. So push that in your community.
Yeah.
And once you do get involved, share that with your friends, share that with your neighbors, do a community block party and promote that. And the police department and other officials would be happy to join in
Oh yeah.
and promote all of that. So
Yep.
it helped me, it gave me some ideas that I hadn't thought of in the past, as far as what I can do to prepare for myself, for my family, how I can help my community. But I encourage everybody to do that. Whether you're actually involved in the CERT team itself or just take the training,
Yeah.
so that you can better yourself and your family and your immediate friends.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So in one of the past episodes we had on Disaster Class, we had Rob Robertson, and he was talking about how he was deployed and assisting with search and recovery rescue for the hurricane in North Carolina. And realistically speaking, and this is, I guess, what it all boils down to for our listeners and our audience, you are either an asset or a liability in time
Yep.
of disaster. Either you're providing help or someone has to come help.
You're either part of the problem or part of the solution.
That's it. So by us being so passionate about this, we're trying to make sure every single community member can become an asset for their community in a time of need. Because the liabilities might blow in with the winds, right? But you don't want to be one of those liabilities now, whereas a responder like myself, when I'm dispatching and managing assets in time of emergency, I don't want to have my family be someone that we have to go get, right? Because now we're putting the lives of the responders at stake. And that's another thing we just wanted to mention. We talked about it at the top, how much we appreciate Herculean effort that the response teams are putting forth for the LA fires, right? We know that this is round the clock. We know that police, fire, EMS, all three are working in tandem to do as much good as possible. And as responders, we just want to say thank you for that. We truly appreciate you. We know that you are professionals, you're good at what you do. But we also want to say take care of yourselves as responders. I know, and Jason can speak to this, everyone else that's been a responder, whether you're punching in for an 8, 12, 16, 24-hour shift, at the end of that shift, when it's this bad, you wanna stay on and take another shift because you want to help. It's very difficult to go home and get your rest and take care of yourself. So we just want to make sure that you responders that are putting forth all this effort, that you yourselves aren't burning out in this as you're taking care of everyone. And we appreciate the passion with which you guys are handling your shifts and trying to help the people in your community, because we know that sometimes can be a thankless job. Being a responder myself can be thankless, but we know that it's invaluable to your community, what you're doing. So just from Disaster Class, Instinct Ready, we just wanted to say thank you for all the responders, and please take care of yourselves as you're taking care of everybody else.
I think it's important too, Wesley, that we call out that other agencies in other states
Yeah.
and even other
Other
countries
countries.
have come in to respond and provide their assistance.
Huge.
And their families are giving up them to be here. The agency that they're associated with has sacrificed that manpower
Mhm.
for assisting in their own communities, their home communities.
Yep.
So we appreciate the efforts and the sacrifices of all of these men and women who have put their efforts and their lives at risk to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you for that.
if I may, guys, I also
Please.
just a quick shout out to a personal friend, colleague, Jillian Devela, LA, OEM. Hang in there. I do hope that you receive all the help that you need. And you're gonna get through this. My heart and prayers are with you and the family and your team.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Anthony. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
So a lot of important information, a lot of big takeaways for our listeners. So yeah, just to echo everything you guys have said. So we have everyone uh, that's being affected and also responding in our thoughts. So um, we're going to keep monitoring this situation, and we might be doing some more updates. But as just kind of maybe look a little recap, making sure you're getting up to date, reliable information. Go to the responders as your kind of your key resource, because they're the ones that are actually tackling the incident. They're going to have the best information. So go to those response agency websites, Cal Fire, Cal OES. So and then we're gonna hopefully try to, not that we want other incidents like this to happen, but we're going to try to do more episodes like this where we're going to give you information about incidents that happen. Try to make this a recurring feature. Hopefully nothing happens, but we know that's not the reality of the world we live in, unfortunately. So, but we're going to keep making this a feature of Disaster Class to look at actual events as they're happening. Are there any key takeaways, lessons learned that we can all benefit from, and we can get you that. So, thank you, everyone. Do you guys have anything else? Any other call outs you want to?
No, I think that's it for now for me.
Go ahead,
A couple
Pappy.
of things I want to share, for our personal mitigation.
Mhm.
We talked about doing that ahead of time. So 2 resources that I've personally utilized, not just gobag shelter in place, but property wise. Ready.gov has some really good information on how to prepare, how to mitigate for all sorts of disasters. But also the app, HazAdapt. I think that's what it is. You can get it on your phone, and it has kind of the same things that you can look at certain disasters, and it has some really good information there. So take the time to prepare and help yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. It's and this, I was kind of thinking, especially when you were talking, Anthony, I was thinking about our community emergency planning class, and what we've been trying to do, just help individuals do a lot of this, go through the process before an event happens, right? In those blue sky days. And one of the things, we like to teach in our CEP class, and Pappy, this as an instructor, thinking about our community lifelines. Sometimes we get wrapped up in the incidents themselves, right? Okay, the tornado, the earthquake, the fire. But as we were talking about recently, Anthony, like there's cascading impacts, right? Just because one event is happening doesn't mean another one can't happen simultaneously. And so it's also thinking about, well, these are my community lifelines, right? And then what if all of a sudden these are gone? What is my plan? What am I going to do if this particular infrastructure is no longer in place? So that's just another call out to. We're going to be trying putting on some more virtual CEP classes coming up in the near future too. And we'll keep you updated on how you can attend one of those. But thank you as always for tuning in to Disaster Class. Hopefully you found this information beneficial. Please, we want to hear your feedback. So if you have anything to share, maybe you are near the affected areas, or you have family or friends, let us know. We want to hear some updates about how people are doing. Are there any stories? You can reach out to us at disasterclass@instinctready.com. You can drop us a message on our social media pages, and we'll get back to you for sure. So thank you so much. Stay educated.
Yeah. Stay prepared.
Stay equipped, and we'll see you on our next regularly scheduled episode of Disaster Class. Stay safe, everyone.